You are listening to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com. All right. Welcome to the Mike Riley Now podcast here on the Young Angels of America Network. I am your host, Mr. Mike Riley. Welcome, everybody, one and all. It is Thursday, March the 9th, 2017. We are definitely in the house. Of course, I am joined by my lovely co-host, Miss Charlie Sandy, and my girl, Cam Robson. Say what up, y'all. Say hello.
Hi, guys. Hi.
Hey. Yes, round of applause, of course. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to everybody that's tuning in on Spreaker, on iTunes, on iHeartRadio, on all the platforms, and everybody that's been following me and giving me good feedback by logging on to MikeRileyNow.com. For all my people that are tuning in on Facebook Live, I see you. Go ahead and log on to MikeRileyNow.com so that way you can hear the show in its entirety. That way you don't miss nothing. You don't miss none of the phone calls we're going to do or none of that cool stuff. So how's everybody doing? Today is March the 9th. Today is the 20th anniversary of the death of the Notorious B.I.G., by the way, so I definitely want to say something about that. I'm a big fan of hip-hop, so I definitely got to say that, so rest in peace to Big. And we just had an election this past Tuesday in the city of Los Angeles, and needless to say, only 11.4% of the city of not the city of Los Angeles, the county of Los Angeles. All right, look, Los Angeles County has about 11 million people in it, right? Out of those 11 million people, about 5 million are registered to vote. And out of that 5 million that's registered to vote, only 500,000 showed up. 500,000. That's crazy for a city this size, but in either case, it was pretty nuts. But we'll get into that later. Right now, on the show, everybody that's on Facebook Live, please log into MikeRileyNow.com. You can listen to the show live there. We have a very special guest on the show today. Today we're going to be speaking with Gabe Castro. He's an immigration attorney from Alabama, now working in Los Angeles, working with the Catholic Charities of Los Angeles.org. And we're going to be talking about immigration today, and we're very excited to have him on the show. So, Gabe, are you there?
Yeah, I'm right here.
All right, Gabe, welcome to the Mike Riley Now podcast. We give you a round of applause like we do all of our special guests. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you on. Thanks for being here.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to jump right into it. Immigration, as of, obviously is a very hot topic issue right now, based upon a lot of the things that are taking place in the Trump administration as far as the deportations and also, too, just as far as like the culture and the animosity concerning immigration that's taking place in this country. A lot of people are having this backlash towards immigration. And you being an immigration attorney, what are your feelings on some of the things that are taking place right now?
Mike, I'm greatly concerned. You could just see it over the last few months that the clients that I've been seeing have come in and they just realize how much higher the stakes are and how important the things that we are doing. And I mean, just earlier today, I was talking to a woman and she right now she's undocumented. She's applying for a waiver, but she asked me, like, what can I do? How do I protect myself?
Right.
And the best thing I can do is tell her rights and tell her how to act and she was in tears. She was in tears in front of me, just thinking about it.
That's pretty crazy, but I do want to ask you about undocumented people in this country, undocumented citizens, and that type of impact that it has. I mean, for a lot of people who are here, who are part of the, I think is it the DACA? Is that what it is? Is that the Dreamer? That's the Dreamers Act, and the Dreamers Act. Right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, it's the Deferred Action of Childhood Arrivals. The Dreamers Act is something else. But yeah.
Yeah. And so for a lot of people, I'm not too sure about the young lady you spoke to earlier today, but me personally, I know a lot of friends. I grew up in a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood, and a lot of my friends were undocumented citizens who came here when they were children. And, they really didn't have a choice but to come here and deal with all that. And now that they're older, they run the risk of deportation. Will DACA change? Do you think this will change under the Trump administration? And is it true that the city will have the personal info on the kids and be able to just go to their homes and just arrest them and take them away?
Right. Well, so Trump has pledged in his campaign to repeal DACA, and many people in the immigration world, we were concerned that he was going to do that day one. He has been very hesitant to make any public statement since he's been inaugurated. He has mentioned that it's going to be somewhat difficult for him. He didn't really say exactly what the future for the DACA program is. And yes, to the second part of that question, by applying for DACA, by the very definition of the DACA recipients, they're undocumented. And so if Trump were to repeal DACA, he does, the USCIS does have that information on those recipients. Fortunately, right now there is a departmental memo that prevents the enforcement agencies within ICE from using the information in DACA. But again, that's just a memo that could change in one day. So right now there's no risk, but who knows what's in stake, what's in store for the Trump administration.
Right. And I know a lot of people who are part of the Dreamers are very concerned about stuff like that. But let's kind of shift gears a little bit here, kind of piggybacking off of that a little bit. When it comes to sanctuary cities themselves, and speaking of ICE and speaking of stuff like that, the state of California has taken a hardcore stance against Donald Trump, or at least the Trump administration, and this whole anti-immigration thing that's kind of taking place right now. What do you think the future is for sanctuary cities, and will places like California, Los Angeles in particular, be required to start talking to the federal authorities whenever somebody who's undocumented gets in trouble? And is that a good thing that it happens?
Well, I do think the state of California has been a lot more vocal about being against the Trump immigration orders and being against the current federal government's policy on immigration. The mayor here has been a little bit more hesitant on calling Los Angeles a sanctuary city.
Yeah.
And part of that is that sanctuary city is quite a misnomer. A lot of people think that there's a lot more protection to it than there is. When people hear sanctuary city, they think it's someplace you can go and the city government will somehow protect you from the federal immigration officers, but that's not anywhere near what sanctuary city is. It just means it's a rule between the city sharing the information of immigrants to ICE, or handing over people who have been arrested to ICE without a warrant. Now, what it sounds like is that we're going to keep Los Angeles has been a sanctuary city, and it's going to continue that way. But there's a real threat from the Trump administration. They're going to withhold federal funding to the entire city if that happens.
Right.
Wow. If he continues on that threat, there's no way that we can continue as a sanctuary city status.
Right. Yeah. Well.
Right.
Well, hopefully that I mean, but how do you feel about it in the terms? Because I talk to a lot of my conservative friends, and of course they're the ones who argue against the idea of sanctuary cities. They'll say things like, "Well, why is it okay for if in an undocumented person, they call them illegal immigrants, of course, if one of them commits a crime, shouldn't it be the responsibility of that particular municipality or that particular state to report them to have them deported?"
Right, but the sanctuary city policy doesn't just protect those who've committed crimes. It also protects anyone who's in the system. That means anyone who's been arrested for a crime which they've been alleged to have committed, which they haven't, or even if it was just a lower infraction, which maybe they got arrested for, or maybe they didn't. Maybe they just encountered the system and they got flagged, right? So it protects anyone who comes into the criminal system, even if they haven't committed a crime. So I think I'd rather have more people being protected by a policy than people being harassed because of a policy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, that does make sense. What, Charlie? I know you got something to say.
Hi. So I'm Charlie. I'm I guess technically an immigrant from the UK.
She's not illegal.
I'm not illegal. I am documented. I have proof. But I've lived here for about 11 years now. And I recently had a little bit of a run-in with the DMV, the happiest place on earth, where I was going in and required a great deal of documented proof that I was, in fact, a resident here, and that I came illegally. That I came legally. I needed my green card, my passport, two documents that proved that I had a residence here, among many other documents. And it was difficult for me, and I'm legally here, and I have been for a while. I was wondering if you have any particularly interesting stories where people have run into serious trouble because they've had situations where they're either minorities or have come from a country that's more profiled, I guess you could say, than
in other
mine.
words, are the people who come from the brown countries.
Yes.
You know?
to be indelicate.
Right.
Have you encountered any situations that are just, plain horrifying, to be honest?
Just horrifying in terms of what exactly?
Just, I guess I don't want to say injustice because it sounds a bit obvious, but feeling my own experience, I felt like it was a very nervous Nelly kind of response to me coming in, and I'm perfectly legal being here. Have you had any experiences where people who are not as legal being here or are considered undocumented workers trying to get something done and have had a serious legal issues in the way?
Right. Yeah, I've seen a few stories that do strike me as quite worrisome. One a client of mine in the past, that he was stopped because he was driving without a license, and he was married to a U.S. citizen. He was undocumented, but within 3 months he was back in Mexico because of the process. Right.
Oh,
so.
You're kidding.
You see also really big problems with notario fraud here in Los Angeles. And it's probably rampant in other places. I'm not as familiar with that, but in LA, there's so many places that they call themselves notarios, and notarios or notary in other countries, they are quasi lawyers. And so people see notario, which it just means they're a notary public. And that's much smaller bar of being licensed to do that than being licensed to be attorney. So people from other countries see the word notario, and they think, oh, this person can actually help me. And when in fact, these people are not licensed to practice law. And many times they give them advice for either short-term benefits that might get them in trouble in the long term, or things where they're actually being completely fraudulent when they apply. I've seen people that have applied, and this was especially a problem in the early 90s. They were applying, if they were from Mexico, they were claiming a political asylum from some civil war in El Salvador, right? And so at the time, USCIS was too busy processing all these applications that they went by 5-10 years where they were sitting on a work permit before immigration even discovered it. But once immigration discovers it, that's it. There's no getting around lying on an asylum application.
Wow.
And so this was common practice. And this is actually something I'm worried about with the Trump administration.
Right.
Because we already are seeing right now in the city of Los Angeles and the surrounding areas, the wait time for an asylum interview is 5 years. The Trump administration is now asking to pull aside 5 years. That's right. The Trump administration is pulling asylum officers out of the LA office and putting them towards the border to be able to do credible fear interviews. Now, if the wait's already 5 years, what do you think is going to happen when the priority is being pulled away from the city and all of the resources to process these applications are being pushed in another location? It's just going to be pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. Now I tell you one thing: if you were a notario in this situation, you would know you could pull these fraudulent claims, and you would have 5+ years, possibly 10 years. I would predict that you could put people in risk and have them rely to USCIS without being discovered for 10 years. By the time people will start realizing what you've done to them and what you've done to their life here in the United States, you'll be gone. You'll be there. It
by
really
that time,
is opening a risk.
Yeah, definitely. That seems like
it's something that I'm concerned over.
Right. Gabe, will you stay with us on the other side of the break here?
Absolutely.
All right, awesome. All right, y'all. We are speaking to Gabe Castro, immigration attorney, right here live on the Mike Riley Now podcast. Log on to MikeRileyNow.com. Make sure you're listening. We'll be right back on the other side of the break. You are listening to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com.
With taxes! With taxes!
You think of the children.
Are these morons getting dumber or just louder?
Dumber, sir. They won't give up the bear patrol, but they won't pay taxes for it either.
Ducking this issue calls for real leadership. People, your taxes are high because of illegal immigrants. That's right, illegal immigrants. We need to get rid of them.
Immigrants. I knew it was them. Even when it was the bears, I knew it was them.
All right, that's my little Simpsons reference right there. We always got to give one up there because they always kind of predict the future a little bit. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Mike Riley Now podcast here on the Young Angels of America Network. Forgot to shout out Brooke Doherty earlier, the executive director of the Young Angels of America Network. So we have to say hello, Brooke. We are still on the line with immigration attorney Gabe Castro. Gabe, thanks a lot for joining us again. Now, the reason I played that Simpsons clip is because to me it kind of is starting to reflect the culture of the United States. Not to say that we haven't always had this culture of keep everything American and keep the immigrants out and all this other stuff. But this is starting to there's been a lot of fuel added to this fire over the last few years. Now, a lot of people turn around and they point to illegal immigration, mostly people from south of the border, as an economic stifle or something that stifles them economically. In other words, these people are taking our jobs. I'm curious to know your feelings towards that. Do you think we have an illegal immigration problem, or do you think we have an illegal employment problem? Is it that people are offering, rich white employers are offering these people jobs and they're coming here and taking them and hiring people illegally, versus them just coming here illegally and finding a job?
Right. Well, over 70% of undocumented immigrants, they pay their taxes. And that tells me something, that many of them are presenting their employers with documentation that the employers can sort of clean their hands with it, right? Something that they can turn the other way. They're providing them with just enough. I don't think there's that many employers that are just willing to hire undocumented immigrants, right? Because they know that there's penalties to them. The penalties are much harsher on an employer than the employee in that situation.
Yeah, now, absolutely. But is that something that's enforced? I mean, are we ever going to see INS or ICE running through some place arresting illegal immigrants or anything like that? I mean, is that a law on the books that's being enforced?
I'm not sure how it's enforced against the employer right now. I do know that many companies are trying to maintain strict immigration policies to where they would not be punished in that way. Mm-hmm. I do know that the workplace raids have begun already under Trump, and it was something that we saw with the Bush administration, and I think we're going to continue to see with the Trump administration is they're going to show up to workplaces. They're going to show up to construction sites. They're going to show up to areas that are traditionally
right, kind of
traditional undocumented worker areas.
Right.
And they're going to start enforcing immigration laws there. I don't think that's something that employers want, and I know it's not something that the workers want.
Right.
And I think it's disruptive to the entire system. Now, a lot of people think that, like you're saying, that immigrants come here and take jobs, mm-hmm. and that's bad for the economy. But mm-hmm. That's something that is widely disagreed with by economists. Economists are very much in agreement that immigration, both legal and illegal, has a net benefit for the economy. That there is some disagreement on whether the lowest skilled workers are negatively affected by immigration, but overall it's agreed upon by economic experts that immigration is good for the country.
Right. Okay, so when you hear things like when Donald Trump says they're not bringing in their brightest, they're not bringing in their best, is that something that, and you talk about low skilled workers, is that something that should be a trade off? Should we be seeking low skilled workers, or should we be seeking those who can come here and do other things, or do we have that? Is that something that's coming in? I'm not too sure, but I'm just asking.
I don't see why we should have to choose. Why is it necessary that we treat some workers differently than others because of their background?
Right.
I think that when you start enacting policies like that, then you start seeing negative effects, and that those policies were in place years ago, and areas and times that they would refer to as they were more European favorable. Right. And the idea was sort of I don't want to say racist, but that's kind of where the laws were coming from. Right. And an idea that the Europeans should have a top choice at legal immigration in the United States over Hispanics and Asians and Africans. And it's not a policy that I think we should adopt as a country. I don't think it screams welcoming. I think that's not what the United States has been about in the history of the United States. We've been a melting pot, and I think we should continue to encourage diversity. And I think that means diversity of the workforce as well as ethnicity and race.
Right. It's funny because earlier this week, my man Ben Carson, who many of you know, he said something along the lines of, he was talking about immigration, and he said something along the lines of involuntary immigration. In other words, people on the slave ships, the slaves were involuntary immigrants. I have never heard such stupid shit before in my life, personally. But I thought that was hilarious. But just coming from the other side, as far as people from the south of the border are concerned, do you think they're more considered refugees, just kind of like those who are coming from the Middle East? Because, a lot of them are escaping a lot of harsh environments in places like Honduras and Guatemala and places like that. And they come through Mexico to get into this country. Would you consider them more refugees, or would you actually consider them just people who are looking to leech off the system?
I definitely wouldn't consider them as people leeching off the system. Unfortunately, they don't qualify as refugees under U.S. law, and that's the sad part about that group. Is that
Right.
For so many of those people coming from Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala, they're escaping gang violence. The gang violence there has become rampant, and it's become such a problem that just a few years ago, Honduras had the highest murder rate in the world.
Right. Yes.
And these are pretty small countries. They can't afford to lose that many of their youth.
Right.
And so, so many people are escaping that environment, and they're fleeing. They're fleeing. They're not looking for better economic opportunities. They're just looking to survive. So yes, under the layman's term of a refugee, these people are refugees.
Yeah.
They're seeking asylum.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, here in the United States, we can't offer them asylum. The law, written right now, for the most part, escaping gang violence is not a reason to seek asylum or to claim yourself a refugee. It's making it very hard for these people to stay in the country because they can't meet that definition.
Do people try to claim I'm escaping gang violence as a reason to seek asylum in the United States?
Yes, a vast majority of those cases that are seen in immigration court,
right?
Those kids, and many of them have been kids, are claiming asylum based off of gang violence.
Man,
unfortunately, it's very hard to win in one of those cases.
That is something else. I don't understand why it's hard to win in those cases when, those who come from the Middle East are pretty much escaping the same thing. I understand it's a different type of warfare.
But it's still warfare.
It's still warfare. Yeah, exactly. It really is. Now, the last thing I want to ask you about, I want to stick with, oh, wait, hold on. Charlie's pointing to something. Wait, hold on. She's pointing. Here, I'll let you read it. We got a question written down from one of our audience members who wants to ask a question. I'm going to let Charlie read it, though. Go ahead, Charlie.
Hi, sorry. We were wondering if you could possibly talk to us about your Honduras client that you've had recently. I heard a little bit about the situation. I was wondering if you could enlighten us more on the topic.
Yeah, I was describing it earlier. It's a woman I saw today, and she's undocumented, and
Oh, yeah, that was
unfortunately, right, that was her, and
Okay.
and so she, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that right there. I mean, to kind of work in this kind of work and to have to kind of tell people, well, hey, you know, and do you deal with a lot of deportation cases where people actually do get deported?
Fortunately, right now, I haven't seen that for any of my clients,
Right.
but it happens every day. It
Right.
does.
Yeah. And, you know, and it's true. People do get split up from their families. This isn't just some urban myth where, where a mother or a child can be taken away from them in the same manner as the old days. And that type of stuff happens as well. Correct.
Right. In fact, Secretary John Kelly, mentioned the other day that he wants to change the policy at the border. Now they want to separate families in detainment. And the idea is that they're going to use this policy.
Mr. Castro, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. We're about to hit a break, and we're about to come on the other side. Could you just stick out for one more second? Sorry about that.
No worries.
Thanks.
No worries.
All right, y'all. It's the Mike Riley Now podcast here on the Young Angels of America Network. We'll be right back. You are listening to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com. All right, y'all, perfect. We always hit our little breaks here, but it's good to give ourselves a breather. We were speaking here to Mr. Gabe Castro, immigration attorney from Alabama, now working in Los Angeles, working with the Catholic Charities of Los Angeles.org. Yeah, Mr. Castro, I didn't mean to interrupt you in your story. We gotta move on to our next segment here, but I really want to thank you for being on the show. Is there any way people can get in contact with you? Can they reach you via social media or anything like that?
I'm not too public on my social media, but if they want to reach out and look up for more information, if this situation might apply to you, about anyone you know, you can call our office at 213-251-3411. We do consultations. We do all kinds of advice and services for anyone who needs it.
Awesome. That is great. Thank you so much, Mr. Castro. I really appreciate you coming on the show. God bless you for what you do. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, y'all. All right, and that was awesome. That was a pretty cool interview. Just listening to Mr. Castro speak about that type of stuff is pretty gut-wrenching, man. I gotta say so myself. But now we're gonna get into our portion of the show. What's up, everybody there on Facebook Live? I know a lot of y'all couldn't hear what we were doing. That's why I'm telling you to log on to MikeRileyNow.com. That way you can listen to the show live. We will be coming out with the app pretty soon. So yeah, and that way y'all can listen live there too. You'll be able to download it in all those app stores. But let's get into some nitty gritty stuff. Okay. Now, this week has been another roller coaster, right? I mean, it seems like every week, like it's like, damn, how much stuff happened since like the last week, right?
I've just stopped asking now.
Yeah, it's just like it's hard to keep. Like I say this every week, but it's extremely hard to keep up with all the news. One of the biggest stories that came out was this wiretap story. I'm not going to get too deep into this. I'm just going to talk about this because this is why I think it matters, right? So earlier this week, Donald Trump put out a tweet sometime in like the middle of the night talking about, I got evidence that Barack Obama wiretapped me at the Trump Tower. Now, obviously, he had no evidence for this, right? And he said this is like the biggest scandal since Watergate. And then amidst all that, he found a way to diss Arnold Schwarzenegger for his horrible Celebrity Apprentice ratings. Get it together, Arnold. But get to the chopper. But Donald Trump sends this series of tweets out, and then immediately after that, the media goes bananas about it. I mean, I'm hearing this story so much about did Barack Obama wiretap the president and this and this and this and that. Now, don't get me wrong. If it actually happened, yeah, it would be considered like the biggest scandal or whatever else the case may be. But at the same time, things like that just don't happen practically. Not only do that happen practically, but look at how much of a distraction this is from everything else. What else took place this week? There was, also too, the healthcare law. The Republicans finally put forth their version of their Affordable Care Act, which is, and we'll get into that in a second. But I just say that to say, I still wonder if Donald Trump is either incredibly smart or just incredibly stupid. Does he do these things, like these tweets and stuff like that, to distract us from other stuff like what's going on with Russia, which I don't even think we should be focusing on that much, not to mention his policies, the people he's putting in office? Or is it just that he just is that thin-skinned? He has that much of an ego problem? Yeah, I don't know.
I'm sorry, I'm silent on the matter of Donald Trump right now. I think, because you're talking about this, how these kind of things, his tweets suddenly become the weekly news.
Right.
And it's gotten to a point where we are now, we're not being informed on serious issues happening in the rest of the world because of this. I don't know if you guys all know about what's happened in, and I'm not going to say this right, Mosul? In the area in
Iraq. Yeah, you absolutely said it right. Yes. Yeah.
In where ISIS and Iraqi warriors are going head to head right about now,
right.
And there are tons and tons of people flooding out of the area as fast as they can.
Yeah, and that's a really big deal, and they're trying to push ISIS out.
Yes,
but,
it's a huge thing. They're trying to regain the territory back into Iraq, and it's huge, it's groundbreaking, and it wasn't presented to me in the news.
Yeah, you hardly even hear about stuff.
I was sitting here trying to make sure I said Mosul right, because I hadn't heard anyone say it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things, once again, that kind of goes ignored. We have a tendency to focus so much on the entertainment aspect of what's going on in our politics. I'm even being kind of guilty of it myself right now, even by just talking about it. But I'm just curious. I'm just pointing that out. And I want all my people out there in TV land to really chime in on this. What do you think? What do you think it is about this narrative that takes place within our system that gets people so riled up on the little things? And I do want to talk a little bit about infrastructure and stuff like that, but let's talk about the Republicans' version of
the Affordable
Care Act, the unaffordable, or whatever they call it, Trump Care.
They're calling it Obamacare Light.
Yeah, Obamacare Light, Obamacare 2.0.
That sounds like a really bad beer commercial.
Yeah, it does.
Why choose that out of everything?
It has the same name, but half the nourishment.
Obamacare
Lights.
Light. Half the calories.
Okay.
The one no one wants.
And so what did the Republicans do with the healthcare law? Right now, I told y'all they didn't have a plan. I told you they didn't have anything solid because they couldn't effectively repeal the Affordable Care Act the way they wanted to without having to throw in some dollar bill, without having to find a way to pay for it, or without having to kick millions and millions of people off healthcare. They couldn't find a way to do it. So they said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to try to compromise, right? Remember, the Republican Party, for the most part, and all my conservative friends out there, you know what I'm talking about. The Republican Party is the party for the corporations. They are the corporatist party. They are the party of privatization. They are all about less government and more power in the hands of private enterprise. And private enterprise, as we all know, are corporations. They're businesses. They're entities that make money. They're not things that are set up for the people. And so within that, they have what they call a profit motive, right? There is a huge profit motive in the healthcare industry in this country for some reason. And so the Republicans, when they decided to put out this new law, they decided to kind of tinker with the profit motive a little bit. They said, okay, cool. Well, we're going to get rid of the individual mandate, right? That was the part of the law that said that you have to have health insurance, and if you don't, you got to pay the penalty. By the way, the insurance companies were the ones who put that in the Affordable Care Act. It wasn't Barack Obama, because they said if we don't cover everybody, we're going to lose money. That's what the insurance company said. So what happened? Okay. And why did the plans cost so much, right? Why did your premiums go up? The reason why your premiums were going up and everything was costing so much, and I've said this on this show before, is because they have to cover everything now. They can't sell you these junk plans anymore. That's against the law. The Republicans want to bring that back. They say we want to go ahead and offer you tax credits based upon your age and not your income. So if I'm 20-something years old, or like Charlie and Cam's age right here, they're probably not going to get sick as fast. They can get hurt, but they're probably not going to get sick as fast as everybody else. So we're going to let you pick a healthcare plan that you like, that you want, meaning that you can get one of these healthcare plans. I mean, it's a healthcare plan that you like until you get sick, because it costs you about $50 a month.
Although I beg to differ, we kind of go to school in like a germ factory, so I think we actually do get sick a lot more often than you would imagine.
We're sick.
Well, one thing the Republicans did do is they did keep the part in the law where it said you can stay on your parents' insurance till you're 25, 26.
Well,
so,
that's
they got
simply
that part
because Trump's children don't want to go off his healthcare plan. They just don't
I'm
have
not paying for them.
They just don't have the responsibility.
Right. But anyway, so they can sell you these kind of bullshit plans where if something happens to you, all you get is like a Band-Aid and a bottle of Robitussin, right? Or your deductible's so high. But then they also kept, they can't, the lifetime cap. When my mother, I won't even talk about that, but I have a really good friend who, his mom was sick with cancer. And right before, the insurance company sent her a letter, I'd say, about maybe 3 or 4 months before Obamacare kicked in, saying that you've reached your lifetime, you've reached your limit. And if you spend another $100,000, we're kicking you off the insurance. And then you're asked out. You're on your own. Well, the reason why the insurance companies do that is because it saves them money. The Republicans said, no, we can't do that. We can't have you kicking people off insurance. So the insurance companies are like, we don't like this law. We don't like what the Republicans. We want things to go back the way they were before. And the people don't want that. The people don't want things to go back the way they were before. So what do? Sounds like single payer to me. I mean, healthcare doesn't have to be so complicated. If you're an American citizen,
make it universal.
You get fucking healthcare. And I know there are a lot of people out there who are on this, well, I don't want to go to medical school for, X amount of years just so I can get out and work for free. Oh, cut the shit, okay? If me as an American citizen, if I can go somewhere in Germany or Europe and I get sick and I can get seen for free, and I'm not even a citizen of that country, by a doctor who looks like they're doing well to me, that probably means that's a bunch of bull.
Yeah. And also, if you're going to medical school for the pure reason of earning a good paycheck, I don't think you should be a doctor.
Yeah,
you should be going to medical school to help people.
Right.
Go become a accountant if you want to get money. Don't
or
become
a
doctor.
lawyer or something. Don't join a profession where your other people's lives are in your hands.
Right. You don't get into the medical field to get rich. You get into it to help people. Just like you don't get into government to get rich.
Yeah,
you get into government to help people. Although you can get rich by getting into government these days because there's so much money in politics.
And it's slightly less about helping people now.
Yeah, it's not necessarily about helping people. So, you get the money out of politics. But that's just saying that to say, getting the profit motive out of the healthcare industry. I don't understand why it's okay to make money off of people's lives anyway.
Well,
that's very barbaric.
I just don't understand why we have to put a price on even living.
We did this before.
Yeah,
we put prices on people's lives.
Oh,
yeah.
Right, yeah. We all remember.
We all remember the whole, Are they immigrants? Should I call them immigrants?
I don't know.
Unwilling immigrants.
Are you talking about the involuntary immigrants?
Yes, I'm talking about the involuntary
the involuntary immigrants. My family was an involuntary. I came from involuntary immigrants. My family was on those plantations talking about one day, we're going to just start a free enterize or whatever the hell they were talking about.
Or just buying time, just simply buying time until
holding off.
Feel like we can start a business.
Feel like we can start this revolution. Anyway, all right, enough of the ridiculousness. I want to talk about infrastructure real quick before the end of the show. Now, Donald Trump has proposed investing $1 trillion into infrastructure, right? Now, we're going to talk about investments and entitlements versus actually spending money. A good investment would be a good investment in infrastructure, right? The reason why is because when you build roads and tunnels and bridges and airports and all this type of stuff, you have to maintain it. To maintain it, you got to hire people. You got to put people to work. And it's something that gets maintained over time. That's lots of jobs. Donald Trump is right about that. But how does he want to do it? Right? He said, we're going to invest $1 trillion in infrastructure. Where he's going to get that $1 trillion from? I don't know. We're going to pay $20 billion for a wall, so who knows where the infrastructure is.
We know where that's coming from. Mexico's going to pay for it.
No, Donald Trump has stopped saying that. I ain't heard him say that in a long time. But But what Donald Trump wants to do is called a private-public partnership, right? A private-public partnership is essentially where a private company bids on a government contract to build something, to build like a road, right? So I'm Mike Riley Corporation. I have the best roads. My roads are the best. Right? And I bid a government contract. The government says to me, yo, Mike, we want you to build this road over here in the west side of LA. You know, I said, okay, cool. I take half of the government's money, which is your money, taxpayer money, right? And I use the rest of it, you know, off of investments, right? I build the road. And in order for me to make money off of the road I just built for you to drive on, I got to charge you a toll. I got to make you pay for it somehow. That's what public-private partnerships are. They aren't things where everybody is included, you know, where we all put into the pool so that way we can all benefit off of it. Now, Donald Trump doesn't want to do that. He wants to put more power in the hands of the corporations and take power out of the hands of the people. And the Republicans claim that this is putting power in the hands of the people. I don't know about that. I don't know if that really makes sense to me.
Do you have a corporation with your name on it?
Nah. And you can't really do it. Now their argument is, well, whenever government gets into something, government completely screws it up, right? So government just naturally just doesn't work.
Government's supposed to be by the people, of the people, and for the people.
Not to mention, government isn't a perfect thing. It needs to be weeded out.
Yeah.
Modified. But look at our school system, for example. They'll sit there and say, well, our school system sucks because government's running it. But at the same time, they're the same ones who want to slash and cut and take from the school system. So how does that work? But anyway, so with the infrastructure spending plan, it could be a good thing in the sense, well, we may get our roads, we may get our bridges, we may get our tunnels, because Lord knows this country needs it. We have pipes underground in the United States of America that were built back in like the early 1800s or something.
The days of yore.
Exactly. So we can use some infrastructure. We can use an infrastructure boost in this country, and it is a wise investment.
It is, and I find one thing I have from an environmental standpoint with this whole big infrastructure plan, because I agree that we need this infrastructure that he's suggesting, but I don't think he's going to do it in any way, shape or form environmentally friendly, and that is so much greenhouse gases, that is so much air pollution, water pollution going, you know, into, well, the air and the water, and it's just, I mean, you know, on the EPA website,
oh my god,
got rid of everything that said science. Right. And just now, the head of the EPA,
Scott Pruitt,
yes, has said, oh, no.
Yeah.
CO2 is not contributing to global warming whatsoever.
Yeah.
I fear for us.
Yeah, we're definitely headed for something kind of insane in that sense. You can't hate the EPA and hate the environment at the same, or not work for the environment at the same time. Anyway, all right, y'all. Well, that is our show. Thank you so much for joining us. God bless every single last one of you who are listening. Thank you so much to Gabe Castro for coming by the show. God bless Brooke. God bless Charlie. God bless Cam. And God bless all of you that were watching right there on Facebook Live and everything else. Please remember, in the words of a great scholar, democracy is not a spectator sport. You have to get involved, man. You have to do your thing. Remember, we are all in this together. Follow me on MikeRileyNow.com, and we will see y'all next week. God bless. Cheers. You are listening to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com.